As a data analyst, one of the most underrated tools, in my opinion, that I use on an everyday basis is Excel. From cleaning data, doing data validations, and also communicating my results to stakeholders or clients, it's a tool that I use every day, and it's a tool that I believe everyone should learn to use. If you are starting out and you are wanting to become a data analyst, I think it's important for you to understand a lot of the concepts and logic behind Excel, because you can then apply that when you go to use other data analytics tools like Tableau or Click, or even when you're going to write your code in SQL. A lot of the concepts and the logic that you learn from using Excel can be applied, which I'll discuss a little bit further in this video. So hi, if you're new here, my name is Nakya. I'm a data analyst. I've been a data analyst for about 5 years. And in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about 5 Excel functions that I use pretty much on an everyday basis. So let's go ahead and get started. When you're first starting out, it's important to understand how these Excel functions work, because they're what you're going to be using for the most part. Like my first project as a data analyst involved me using Excel. I had to connect to the database, insert my code there, and then pivot the results and provide that to my client. So again, I think it's important that you learn and understand some of the concepts. And you don't have to remember everything word for word. There's Google, you can look things up, but just understanding the logic behind a lot of these functions that you can apply elsewhere when you get more projects and get more skills and more advanced. The first function that I want to talk to you about that I use a lot is the concat function. It used to be called concatenate. So with the and I'll be linking articles from Microsoft in the description box on these different functions if you want to look into it a little bit further, because I'm just going to be discussing them kind of general terms and how I understand them and how I use them. So with the concat function, it allows you to combine text from different ranges or strings within Excel. So let's say, for example, I used to work with our HR partners a lot in a previous role, and I'm not sure if it's the HRS system or PeopleSoft or whatever the case may be, but they would send me employee data where it would have the employee's name split. So it would have their last name in one column and their first name in another column, and I would need to combine them into one cell. So what I would do is I would use the concat function in order to join those two texts together into one cell. I still use it for that purpose if I have like name split, because that still happens in today's world, but not as often. But the way that I use the concat function today is when I am writing my code in SQL, and let me explain that a little bit better. So in SQL, when I'm writing my code, I'm typically, you're pulling data from multiple tables. So I may pull data from an employee table and I need to join it to a table that has orders in it. And both tables may have some of the same field names within them. So what you need to do is you need to create what we call an alias to tell the database which table you want the field it to pull the field name from. So let's say that both tables have an employee ID. The employee table as well as the orders tables both have an employee ID. You need to create an alias. Since those are duplicated fields, you need to say, hey, pull it from this table opposed to the other table. So we use aliases. So I can alias it out and say this, like the employee table is called table A and the orders table is called table B. So I can say, I want these field names from table A and these field names from table B. So what I do is when I'm first going through writing my query, I pull the data, I pull like a short sample, like a 100 rows of data from one of the tables, just so I can get the field names from the database. I paste it into Excel, and then what I'll do is copy the field names that go across the different column. I'll copy that and I will paste it, and let me go ahead and demo that. So I'll copy across. Let me put it in a new sheet. I don't typically put it in a different sheet. I typically paste it on the left, but this data that I'm working with today is just a spreadsheet that I pulled from Kaggle. If I can remember, I'll link it below if you want to play with this data set. But I will copy and paste, and I will transpose it. So let's say that these are all of the field names that I have in my table. And what I want to do, because I need to create an alias, I will use the concat function to put in what that table is. So when I'm writing my code and I need to pull the field names, column names, you have to put a comma to separate them, the alias, and then the field name. So that's what I use the concatenating function to bring all those different texts together in one field. It's easier for me to do it that way because in Excel you can double click and drag it down so it applies it to all of the field names, which is what I'm going to do. So if I do equals concat, so the first thing that I want in my concat function is the comma separator. You don't have to do this for the first name, but I just put it in there because I typically don't know initially when I'm doing this what is going to be the first name there. And I know some people put their commas behind the field name. I'm in front of girl, so yeah, that's the way I do it. You guys feel free to do it how you please, but I am going to put the first text that I need to combine in my string. So I'm going to do the double quotes and I'm going to do a comma, because that's what I'm going to use to separate it, and then a comma to separate that. And then the second text field that I want is my alias. So let's say this is the data coming from table A. So I'm going to do A dot, oh, hold on, I forgot to put my double quotes to separate it. And then a comma, and then my third text is going to be what's actually in my cell, which is the field name. And then I'm gonna use a parentheses to close that. So you can see here, it gave me a dot age. So if that's my field name, it gives me the comma separator, a dot, which is my alias, and then the field name. So when I go in, I can drag this down, I can drag this function down, and it applies it to every field name that's in my data set. So when I go to put this in the database and write my query, let's say I only needed these two fields, I can copy those, I can paste it into the database and bring back those fields. So this just makes it simpler than going through every field name that you need and doing comma, a dot, and typing it out, for example. So yeah, so that's the first function that I use. All right, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so the second function that I use a lot is going to be the countif function. So this function works as you're counting based on a condition. So in this data set, I have employees. Each employee has an employee like ID. They're unique. I don't believe they all appear to be in sequential order. I don't see any duplicates just glazing over it. So what we can do is count. Let's say that we are trying to count how many employees are over the age of 25, for example. So we have the employee number, and then we are, where is our age? Our age is over here. So let's say we want to count the amount of employees that are over the age of 25. So the countif function works by counting rows. So it's just going to look at, okay, what are your conditions? What are you looking to do? And it's going to do a count, not a sum. Like, we're not going to aggregate the ages. We just want to say, hey, out of all these employees, how many are over the age of 25? So we can use the countif function to easily and quickly do that. Let's see if we write age 25 plus. So we're going to do equal count if, and the first thing it's going to do is ask you your range. And my range is going to be my age. And then what I want to do, the criteria. So I'm looking at age, and my criteria is it needs to be greater than, I'm going to do greater than or equal to 25. So counting the employees, tell me if they're 25 or older. So I have my range as column A. And then my criteria, I'm going to put them in quotes because I'm going to do the greater than equal sign. And then I'm going to put 25, and then I'm going to close it with the double quotes and then close it with my parentheses. So this is saying that we have 988 employees that are over the age of 25. And a way that we can validate that, I have a filter on here already. I can deselect anyone that's under the age of 25 really quickly and apply that. And then we can see if I go Control Shift down. Oh, y'all can't see this. Oh, hold on one second. Okay, so I have adjusted my screenshot. Sorry about that. So you can see here in our count, it says is counting 988 of 1,058 records that show over or equal to 25 years of age. So that's how the countif function works. Now you may be asking yourself, what if I have multiple criteria? So that's where you can do the countifs function. So let's say you have multiple criteria. Let's say that you want to count these that are over the age of 25 but that are female. So you would use the countifs function. So the same function, but you would just add an S to the end. And that would give you the ability to put multiple criterias within your count. So if I do age 25 plus and female. So we're going to do equal count ifs. And my criteria range, I'm going to go back to doing my column A. Oh, hold on, wrong column. So column A. And then my first criteria is going to be, again, the greater than or equal to 25. Oh, I put 25. Greater than or equal to 25. And then comma, my second criteria is going to be in gender. And for that, I want it to be female. So it's telling me that we have 409 employees that are female and 25 or older. So multiple criteria, and you can add additional criteria. This is just the limited selection that I'm doing for this video, but that is just the gist of how that function works. You can do count if you only have one criteria you're looking for, or you can do count ifs if you have multiple conditions within your criteria. So that is the countif function, and let's go ahead and work on sumif. So let's say that what role can we, what column? We have monthly income. Okay, so let's sum the monthly income. So let's say that the sumif works similarly. It's not counting rows, it's actually summing the data. So just know the difference and know when you need to summarize, like add or subtract, do some type of calculation with or aggregate your data. And just know the difference of aggregating and counting, because there is a difference. For example, like when it comes to zeros, like the sum of 0 plus 0 is going to be 0. But if I want to count rows that have 0, if I have 2 rows that have 0, it's going to give me back 2. So just know the difference between a count and a sum. All right, so let's go through the sumif function. And it, again, we're summarizing data. There's a sumif and a sumifs if you have multiple criteria. So let's say that I need to know the female employees and summarize their, what did we say? The monthly income. So let's do that. So I'm going to do equal sum if, and then I'm going to choose my range. And we are going to do gender. And my criteria is female here. And then my sum range is going to be monthly income. So we can see here, and let me put a comma separator. So we can see that the female monthly income is 2.9 million altogether. I don't know how many females, or I didn't count the females, but just that. And if we wanted to see male, we can just change this really quickly to male, and $4 million for the male. So I don't know if that's just an issue with, like, there's more men than female in this data set or not. That's something we can do additional analysis to, like, if these are things that you would question and find out, but that's not for this video. That's for another time. We're not going to analyze data, but these are things that would raise questions to me that I would want to look into. But again, we're not going to do that today. So we can see the male and female income. So we're just looking with the sumif function, looking at the range. The range is where we are choosing one of the data we want to look at. The criteria is that we want to limit it down to female or male. And then what range of data do we want to summarize? So that's the sumif function. Now we can do some ifs where we have multiple conditions. So let's say that I want to do, let me change this back to female. Let's say for the sumifs, I want to do male income 25 plus. Yeah, we can do that. Male income that's 25 and older. So if we do equals sum ifs, we're going to enter the range that we want to sum, which is going to be our monthly income. Hold on, nope, wrong column. We're going to do monthly income. The criteria that we're going to do first is we're going to look at the gender, when we're going to choose male. So let me put that in quotes. We want male. And then the second criteria, did I choose male income 25 plus? And then we're going to do age, a comma to separate, and then we're going to do greater than or equal to 25. And then we're going to close that up. So we can see the male income. We have 3.9 million, so a little under that 4 million that we saw earlier for the monthly income. So to me, that makes it seem like most of the men are over 25 of age, or at or over 25 years of age. Okay, so we went over countifs, some ifs, and then we also went over concatenate. Okay, so the next function that we're going to work on is going to be the vlookup. So this is something that I use all the time. Now there are other functions similar that may give you better results depending on what you're using it for, but I typically am using vlookup a lot. But there's hlookup, there's a newer version which is xlookup. You can also use index match, but again, we're going to be talking about the vlookup. So a lot of times I am handed data that's in multiple sheets, and it's like we have data in this sheet, we have data in this sheet, and we need to combine them together. So what I did is I split this data up just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So you'll get data that's this data here, and then you have another set of data that has different information. So with the vlookup, you need to have something in common in order to join this data together. And this is similar to how you would work with tables in a database. For example, you need to join them. You have data in one table, you have data in another table, and you need to join them together. VLOOKUP works in a similar way to that, in my opinion. So again, why it's important to understand some of these concepts in Excel so that you can apply them when you go to use other tools. So let's say, and I typically look for a unique identifier because I'm more than likely going to be working with employee data, but just keep in mind that's not necessary. You can look up any value when you're using the VLOOKUP, but for this example, and again for how I use it, I'm typically using it to look up employee data. So, and we have employee data here. So I have an employee number on this train tab, and then also on sheet 2 I have the employee number here. Now when you're doing the VLOOKUP, a couple of things you need to keep in mind is that when your lookup range, the value that you're looking for has to be on the column furthest to the left of your data, or of your range of data that you're going to look it up for. And it's a vertical lookup, so it's going to be looking down each column to find the data that you're looking for. So it's important to understand the data set that you have as to whether or not you have duplicates in your data or not, because let's say I have employee number 1 shows on this worksheet multiple times. When I do the vertical lookup, it's going to stop once it finds that employee number the first time and return that value. It doesn't matter if it's there 2 or 3 times, it's going to return it the first time it finds it. Okay, so that's why it's important to know which lookup to use when you're doing this. VLOOKUP may not be the best option for you, but again, just for demonstration purposes. So let's say I have, this is my original data set, and I need to bring over the job role and marital status. So for me, I like to name my ranges of data that I'm going to be looking for, and this is just a personal preference, not required to do. So what I'm going to do is highlight the cells, like the range of data, and I'm going to name it here in this upper left corner box. I'm going to name it data, so that when I'm writing my function, the vlookup function, I can just refer to this range of data as data instead of having to come back and highlight this range. This is just the best practice for me, to each their own. All right, hopefully y'all don't hear that. There's a thunderstorm happening this morning. Sorry about that. So let's see, I wanted to bring back job role and the, what did I say, marital status. Okay, so let me put that here, job role, marital status. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the VLOOKUP is like, what do you want me to look up? Where do you want me to look it up at? And then what data do you want me to return once I find it? So we're going to start our function off with equals VLOOKUP. And the first thing is, what do you want me to look up? So this is the value that both sheets have, and that's going to be the employee number. And then it's, where do you want me to look it up at? So this is your table array that it's listed. So where, the range of data, where do you want me to find it at? So I'm going to type in data because I named my range. Oops, hold on, data. And then you need to return the column number for the data that you want to return. So I need to find what column number job role is in and return that value. So if I go to sheet 2, this is where you have to count. So what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So job role is in 7, marital status is in 9. So let me delete the sheet 2. So I wanted to return what's in column 9, and then you want to return if you want an exact match or an approximate match. So this to me reminds me similar of like a wildcard in SQL, where like if I'm trying to find a name of someone and I don't know exactly how it's listed, like I may know that like their last name is Johnson, for example, and their first name starts with an S, and I need to look it up. So I can do like a wildcard match in there, but this gives you an approximate match. I always do false. I want an exact match. I don't want y'all guessing. So I do false and then close that out. So it's returning. Oh, hold on. Did I bring that wrong? Oh, this was supposed to be column 7. Sorry. So this brings back their job role. And also as a tip is to put the absolute value as the lookup value, because my lookup value isn't going to change. Like I'm always going to want you to look at the employee ID and then return. You don't have to do this, but for example, I'm going to be looking up multiple ranges, or I want multiple data points returned. So it's always going to be based off the employee ID. So I'm going to put that as an absolute value, which is the A2, which I can quickly just do by selecting F4. Oh, hold on. F4. And that's just going to put a $ in front of the A and the 2, so that I can drag this function over here and it still always looks at cell A2, and all I have to do is change the column number that I want to return, which is column 9, and then I can double click, drag this down, and it fills in the data for everyone. So that is how I use the vlookup function. All right, and last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about pivot tables. Now, while pivot tables are not a function per se, they are an essential feature in Excel. They allow you to summarize, analyze, and explore and present your data. And to create a pivot table, you're simply just going to select your data range, go to the Insert tab, and click on Pivot Table. And from there, you can drag and drop different fields to create insights. So let's go ahead and work on that. So I'm going to work with sheet 2 since this has most of my data. All right, so I'm highlighting my range of data. I'm going to go to the Insert and click on Pivot Table. And this is the range of data, and I typically put my pivot tables on a separate worksheet. You can put it on an existing one if you'd like. And with the pivot table, you are pretty much analyzing data. Okay, I need to pull this down. When you are using this to analyze your data, to do calculations, to summarize results, that type of thing. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to know what percentage of our employees are female versus male, I can put the gender field name into rows, and then I can also put it into values, which will show me the count. And then I can put that in there a second time, click on this info, and then show data as a percent of the total, and hit OK. So this is allowing me to see that 58%, almost 59% of employees are male versus the 41% of employees that are female. And when you look at these like table, these kind of like calculations where you're showing data as, this is very similar to table calculations in Tableau if you've used it. Like, do I have it up? I want to kind of demo that really quickly if I can. So these quick table calculations that you see where it has running total, difference, percent of total, rank, moving average, those are very similar to what you see in this drop down box here in Excel. So again, understanding how these things work in Excel so that you can apply them in other tools that data analysts use, like data visualization tools, in your code in SQL, all those types of things. You will see how they tie in as you begin to use them a bit more, which is why I'm such an advocate for learning how to use Excel, because if you understand the logic behind Excel, it is so much easier to apply that to other areas and other tools. So I hope you guys found that helpful. That is going to be it. Those are the 5 Excel functions that I use on an everyday basis. I think it will help you to become a better data analyst. And for those that are new and wanting to learn more, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment for Excel functions that you use on an everyday basis or more Excel functions that you'd like me to cover. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video.